It's bone cutting time.
И, наконец, дороги олимпийского чемпиона.
He's a good-looking guy, but has always wanted to be taller.
My bones were being pulled apart, and my bone growth wasn't there.
They cut your shins, they saw into you.
This is him now, struggling to jump and having the dexterity of an 80-year-old.
You would do it again?
I'd probably go for another half inch.
At this point, it's pretty common knowledge that the social media age has raised a generation of individuals who are more conscious about their appearance than any others throughout history. The constant stream of scientific data supports the trend of growing body dysmorphia, with obsessions over unrealistic body standards garnering the greatest attention. However, one element that is often overlooked and omitted from the academic narrative is a person's stature.
We live in a society where taller is better, especially for men.
How come nobody picks Stu?
He's too
He's too short.
Too short?
I wouldn't, because I would think I don't want short little kids. I was thinking like
6 foot and above. I'm sorry, NBA players, that's just how it goes.
With the rise in online dating apps, height preferences amongst men, and especially women, become an increasing barrier within the dating pool. This has led to disillusionment and bitterness amongst many who perceive their stature as an obstacle, preventing them from finding a soulmate or partner. The desire to be taller is further intensified by some studies, suggesting that someone who is 6 feet tall earns nearly $166,000 more during a 30-year career than someone who is 5'5". In this cauldron of discontent and rising pressure, it's perhaps unsurprising that people are willing to explore hazardous means to mitigate their ongoing suffering.
The doctor begins by taking precise measurements of Ryan's leg. Next, he drills into the bone, then surgically breaks the bone. He creates a channel in the thigh bone for the implant.
So you can see it kind of going right down the center of the bone.
The implanted device is secured with screws that are drilled in above and below the break in the bone. Finally, the remote is tested to ensure the bone is separating.
After a few weeks, the bone actually grows back to fill this gap created, often adding a few centimeters onto the femur, tibia, or fibula. This can then be repeated to add whole inches onto someone's height. But now that we've established what this surgery actually entails, it's necessary to understand the origins of the practice. Who came up with it? Is it a reflection of an insecure generation, or was it explored years ago to push the boundaries of contemporary medical knowledge?
Which other ladies of Her Majesty's chamber sent you monies or promises of relief?
The concept of extending the human body was first explored in 15th century England. The rack was a torture device used on people suspected of treason and religious heresy at the Tower of London. The yeoman warders who worked at the tower used the rack to pull on ropes tied to a victim's wrists and ankles. This stretched the body, eventually dislocating the victim's joints. It is theorized that the torture method could lead to a minuscule increase in a victim's height, but Father Henry Garnet was racked no fewer than 25 times in 1606 without any evidence of growing any taller. The title of Father of Modern-Day Leg Lengthening is bestowed on Alessandro Codavia of Bologna, Italy. In 1905, he described 26 cases in which he achieved femoral lengthening of between 3 and 8 centimeters. Years later, in 1932, Dr. Leroy Abbott presented his experience with lower limb lengthening on 73 patients at the Shriners Hospital for Crippled Children in St. Louis. The age of patients ranged from 8 to 19 years, yet due to a number of complications and accidents, the surgery did not become common medical practice.
Здравствует наша славная Родина, ее свобода, ее независимость. Под знаменем Ленина вперед, победа!
In the wake of World War II, many Soviet soldiers returned from the Eastern Front with severe injuries. Yet for those with deformed limbs, their luck was about to improve. In 1951, a Soviet physician called Gavril Abramovich Ilizarov invented the apparatus for lengthening limb bones, reconstructing the bodies of those wounded to great effect. A breakthrough came in 1968 when Ilizarov successfully operated on Valery Brumel, the 1968 Olympic champion and record holder in the men's high jump, who injured his right leg in a motorcycle accident. From the early 1970s up to the mid-1980s, Heinz Wagner from Nuremberg, Germany became an internationally prominent champion of leg lengthening. But, like Ilizarov, he sought to operate on those with complex congenital limb deformities and not ordinary individuals wishing to exceed their genetic height potential.
The trend for limb lengthening surgery swept China, where minimum heights are often quoted on personal adverts and job advertisements as the country opened up to the West a decade ago.
This New York Times article from May the 5th, 2002 highlights a trend amongst hundreds of young Chinese women who are obsessed with their stature or lack of. In a country where there are tallness requirements for jobs, colleges, and even spouses, many young people are willing to take such drastic measures to get ahead, to ultimately fix an issue that wasn't technically broken. Nevertheless, after tens of thousands of botched attempts year upon year, the Chinese government elected to ban the controversial practice in 2006. But the rest of the world did not heed the warning. If anything, they chose to ignore it. As of 2024, limb lengthening operations are performed throughout the world. Evidently, there's a fairly high demand for the procedure. But what exactly are the pros and cons to this risky endeavour, and how have patients been affected long term? Surely there are a multitude of horror stories to unveil.
When you are small, you are not respected as a man.
Like, women generally don't date guys that are shorter than them, so it's kind of tough.
Feeling short is terrible. It's not easy going into society, especially now, today's society, feeling short.
Those without deformities overwhelmingly opt to have the surgery to grow their confidence and offset deep insecurities. In a world where height is a desirable and sought-after asset, the surgery's main benefit is a no-brainer for many. If it indirectly leads to a better quality of life, such as improved social interactions and opportunities, then this can be viewed as a major pro. A person's height is often the first attribute many people notice, and this can ultimately determine someone's initial impression of you. As a taller individual, it is difficult for me to fully realise the struggles of a shorter person, but having battled fairly severe acne at points, I somewhat understand the detrimental effect that physical appearance can have on a person's self-esteem. To remedy this, I took Roaccutane, and many will see limb lengthening as a permanent and better alternative than using insoles or wearing stilts. Unsurprisingly, there are a multitude of cons with limb lengthening. Although it's basically impossible for me to judge, having not experienced the surgery firsthand, there does appear to be one common consensus amongst its patients.
It's definitely a painful procedure.
Right after surgery is going to be really, really painful, and you're like, oh my gosh, this hurts.
But the majority of the pain is usually the day after surgery.
The surgery literally involves breaking your legs, unsurprisingly leading to pain. Obviously, you can use pain medication and physical therapy to remedy the immense discomfort, but the rehab process goes on for months, and the soreness will largely continue throughout. Worryingly, in extreme cases, patients have been partially paralysed by the procedure, as it leads to a higher risk of infection and thrombosis. Meanwhile, one Reddit user claimed he was left entirely paralysed from the knee down, but this claim is unsubstantiated.
If you're not willing to possibly lose some athleticism after limb lengthening, well then, you probably shouldn't do it.
I was practicing jiu-jitsu, martial arts, snowboard, everything.
Imagine if he decides to do Muay Thai. I bet you his, like, where your leg is vulnerable is changed.
There's contradictory reports on whether athleticism can be fully regained or even improved by the surgery. It's argued by some that undergoing intense rehab and a 2-year wait to allow the bone to heal entirely can garner successful results in sports.
In fact, in some cases, people who don't train that hard before surgery, then they go through the rigors of limb lengthening, the long, arduous physical therapy sessions, the mental grit game. Guess what happens afterwards when they're all healed up? They're much better of an athlete than they were before surgery.
In my view, individual patients can likely return to a competent level, but we are yet to witness any professional athletes, particularly in intense contact sports, have the surgery performed. Consequently, no patient's limbs have been subjected to a brutal leg kick by a trained MMA fighter or a tough tackle in the NFL or rugby, making it tough to tell whether the bones are truly more vulnerable. Significant lengthening is also likely to decrease a person's flexibility and possibly muscle strength also, as the tendons struggle to adapt to the new bone length. For these reasons, I'd postulate that the procedure negatively impacts athleticism overall.
Costing anything up to an eye-watering £120,000.
He spent more than $170,000 on the 2 surgeries.
Why is the leg lengthening surgery so darn expensive?
On top of the risk of complications, the surgery remains astronomically expensive across the majority of countries. Turkey currently serves as the cheapest option, with the price ranging from $15,000 to $25,000. Unfortunately, Sedat İlhan, CEO of Live Life Taller, points out the dangers of opting for the overly cheap route.
If you lose your health or one of your legs, you can never get back, or you can never buy with any currency in the world. Be careful with extremely cheap prices.
On this point, I feel the large sum of money to grow a couple of inches could be put to better use. It could be the capital needed to start a successful business, perhaps to learn and master a new trade or skill, maybe even to travel around the globe for self-development and educational purposes, becoming a more rounded, interesting individual. With many people choosing the surgery to finally attract a partner, surely these other options would produce this outcome and appeal to a more genuine, less artificial individual. The cost is therefore a major con in my view. To conclude, I can genuinely understand why men are going to such lengths to grow taller. It's emblematic of society's effective shunning of those of shorter stature, which acts as a catalyst for deep-set insecurities across the board. Yet, aside from undergoing surgery to correct a deformity, I truly believe that limb lengthening for aesthetic purposes is not worth the hassle and financial burden. The money, pain, and years before complete recovery essentially robs patients of potential memories and plans. Life has to be put on hold, and the transformation essentially caters for the vain and shallow. Prioritise self-development and new skills, and relationships and opportunities will follow. But what do you guys think of this new trend? Please leave your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. See you in the next one. Cheers.